I'm one of the grandchildren of Sybil Thorndike. My mother is Anne Casson, who was her youngest daughter, and we all grew up in Canada. So when the This Is Your Life program was being talked about, they wanted to fly my mother over as a surprise for Sybil. So we were all going to be left in Canada being looked after by my father, who was an actor in the Stratford Festival in Stratford, Ontario in Canada. So that was quite a unique thing for us. We had all grown up in a small village in the middle of Ontario in Canada, and the fact that my mum was going to be flying off to England to do This Is Your Life was a big thing. And then we found out that a crew was going to be coming out from England to do some stuff of us. So then we all had to think, what on earth are we going to talk about? What can we say about our granny? And when the crew arrived, they did talk it all through with us. They didn't do it as a kind of an interview, a real interview where they were asking questions and then we would answer it and they would cut it all up. They asked us what our memories were and what we would like to say to our grandmother, and we had to kind of think through what we were going to say and sort of rehearse it to each other. It was our choice what we said, but I think we were sort of directed to what we were going to say. And the worst thing really was that my second brother, Tom, wasn't allowed to say what he wanted to say. He had to do the link into the studio back in England, and the link they'd invented was that my mum is at the theatre. And then Eamonn Andrews was saying in the studio, she is at the theatre, but not the theatre in Canada, she's in the theatre in England. But you can see when Tom says it, he manages to get through the link, and then he almost bursts into tears because he's actually lying to the camera about his mum. And you can see when they cut back to the studio and you see Granny Sybil sitting there, you can see her going, oh darling, because she was so upset for him because he's about to burst into tears. I think it was extremely emotional for Granny Sybil, and because I don't think you kind of remember in those days what a big thing it was to travel around the world, to stay in touch with your relatives. It was a big event when Sybil came to visit us, as she did a couple of times when we lived in Stratford, and it was a big event, even bigger event, when my mother went home to England to see her, which happened because of This Is Your Life. I don't think she ever left us, apart from coming back to make that show. I don't think the show was shown there, but certainly we knew about This Is Your Life. This Is Your Life was a big thing. I don't think we even thought of it as being a television program. There was just this thing called This Is Your Life, which was celebrated as an event, really, rather we didn't know it was a TV program. We thought of it as being, this is something which is being done for our grandmother. This is huge. They're going to say, there's going to be a big presentation evening where they say, Sybil Thorndike, this is your life. And we were all going to be part of it. So that was extremely exciting. Well, it's very odd to look at it now because I've become a program maker since then. So at the time it seemed huge, and all the most important people that we knew about that had anything to do with Sybil were all in the show. So it was a big event. But now when you look at it, you think, well, why is Ralph Richardson there and John Gielgud and Michael Redgrave? Michael Redgrave, who hadn't done very much with her, but Laurence Olivier, who'd done a lot with her, isn't in the show, and he's not referred to. And you think, well, what's that about? And there's very little about St. Joan and other kind of big events in Sybil's life. You think, I don't quite know why they made the choices that they made. I mean, it's still fascinating to watch, and obviously it was great, the four of us as the grandchildren of her youngest daughter being in it all together is lovely for us to look back at as a historical kind of document. Obviously we didn't see the show at all when it was done, so we only knew what the show had been like by talking to other members of the family who had seen it. So it was fascinating then seeing the show some years later when it came out again on BBC Two, and we managed to get a copy of it then. That was the first time that we'd seen it. So that was quite a shock then, seeing yourself as a 12-year-old.
With this incredible Canadian accent, talking like that, you know. We just couldn't believe it was really us, but it was.
And it's lovely as a record having it, because it was very like what Sybil was like, the way she reacted. I mean, either she was a very good actress or she was genuinely surprised. I think she was genuinely surprised, had no idea what was going on. And when Mum came on, she obviously was completely shocked and wondered what was happening to all of us. It gave the programme quite a good link into then seeing what was happening to all of us. I mean, when I knew Granddaddy years later, he was in his 90s, so he was quite quiet. He was still the person that he had always been, but he didn't talk about it. So seeing that show, that's the most I've ever seen him talk about personal things, and saying to Sybil on the show, "I love you," and she said, "Darling, that's the first time you've said that for years." I mean, you think, wow, it really was a big thing for her. That was lovely. In our family, being on This Is Your Life was considered to be a big thing. I mean, it was an honour, to be honest. I think Sybil thoroughly enjoyed it. I think she was shocked that people did manage to keep it secret from her. It was a lovely evening for her, and all the family were there. I think it was a good party. And I suppose because it was as well about her family, she was a very family she was just our granny, we didn't think of her as being this big star. She was just our granny.